From WTDG Toledo, Bridges, with your host, Doni Miller, connecting our community with information about issues and opportunities.
Hey, good Sunday morning and welcome to Bridges. I'm so glad you're here. We have so much we want to talk to you about today, so we're just going to get right to it. We are talking about the importance of voting, and we have with us three folks who are probably the busiest in town when it comes to this issue. Let me introduce them to you now. We have Yvette Thompson, who's the president of the League of Women Voters. It's so good to see you.
Thank you, Doni.
I'm so glad to get you here. I've been wanting to get you here for a long time. I'm glad you're here. We have Mark Buford, who is from the UAW CAP program.
Thanks,
35 years in that position, doing great work about voters around this issue of voting. And Giselle Mendoza, who is the program director of Adelante, fabulous service community, community-based service organizations serving Latinos primarily. Is that right?
Exactly.
Got that right?
Yes.
All right. You guys all belong to this wonderful coalition called Toledo Votes. Is one of the many things that you do around this issue of voting. But why are you spending time this year on this issue of voting? Mark?
The economic downturn we went through 4 years ago was absolute devastation in Northwest Ohio and the country in general. And we've seen a turnaround come back, slow, but coming back. Some fantastic news out of our Jeep plant, our Chrysler plants, and all of them. We think
you tell people.
we need to. Well, we're creating at least 1,100 jobs at the Jeep plant in Toledo, and that'll feed off into probably 8 more jobs per job that's created.
Yay.
Jeep and
Go Jeep.
yeah, and Jeep's going to roll, and it's going to be
That's it.
fantastic for the community. And we need to stay the course that we've been on for 4 years. It hasn't been smooth all the way, but it's been a lot better than from where we was at in 2008. And people voting, it's their civic duty, I feel, and it's a right that a lot of countries don't have. And we need to utilize that, and we need to utilize for our part, our union members throughout the area to get out and vote.
Yeah, we want everybody to vote. I mean, it doesn't really matter what party you're voting for, who you're voting for. Voting is critical. Politics is about everything we do in this nation. And if you can think of one issue that's not affected by politics, you give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about that. I bet I could prove you wrong. This year, though, it is just critical to vote. And one of the things that one of my good friends tell me all the time is that it's our fault as the voters more often than not, because we don't understand that we are empowered and that this is our right to vote, and we don't take that right very seriously. Would you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. The League of Women Voters, we're very involved in, as a grassroots, including a state position and also a national position to get out and talk to people, to encourage those people to come out and vote. We live in a democracy that people should have that right. We looked at the issue of voter suppression and what exactly it's doing to some of the communities. As you say, are we really encouraging people that it is their right to get out and vote? And so the League has really been out educating voter registration. We've also been trying to get a lot of information out to what type of identification you may want to bring to the polling locations.
Talk about that a little bit too. You raised a really provocative point, though. We've been talking about voter suppression on this show for the past couple weeks. John Stainbrook, who's the chair of the Republican Party, says absolutely not happening. Pete Gherkin, who's really active in the Democratic Party, says happening without a doubt. I was listening to a pretty popular radio show, Michael Baisden's show, called Ohio out, said Ohio is absolutely at the top of the list when it comes to voter suppression. What do you guys think? Is it happening here or not? Giselle, any thoughts?
I think so, because we have how you monitor the polls. I think it comes into play. Who's getting out there? Are they registering? Are they sending people away? So I think with the Toledo Vote, that committee, getting people involved to get people to the right places, getting people registered. comes full circle.
Yeah, one of the things though that you guys might agree with though is that voter suppression is less effective if people understand what their rights are. Agree?
Yes. If the states pass laws requiring certain IDs or whatever it is to get to be able to cast your vote, that's the law. And if that's in effect at the time of vote, we need to educate the folks on what they need to do to go down there and make sure their vote is properly cast.
Yeah.
We can't change the law in the middle of it, maybe afterwards, but if that's the law at the present time, then that's what we need to work around that and make sure that the people that we represent or work with have the tools they need to go down and properly cast their ballot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What's the League of Women Voters doing around this issue, the issue to vote?
Well, we've worked in coalition with other groups to provide information, different pamphlets that shows that it's very important to contact the Board of Election to make sure that you know what your registration status is. Also providing information about what type of identification you should bring, like Mark was saying. There are identifications that are important: military ID, state ID. Some of our pamphlets show information that if you may not have those type things, you may have a cell phone bill that has your telephone number, your address on it.
Right.
And you can take that to the poll. But I wouldn't say wait till the last minute. I would say contact the Board of Election as soon as possible to make sure that you know that you're going to the correct polling location. That is really important.
Very, very important. And if you don't wait till the last minute, if you go to early vote, you avoid all these issues of identification to begin with. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the second segment. But that issue of knowing the right place to go is critical. Why is that?
Well, we hope that the Board of Election has done their work as far as making sure every poll worker does know how to assist that voter that comes in. But we just need to make sure that it's just so important that you contact them and then you know where you're going. Early vote is an option that you can do as well. And that starts October the 2nd.
October 2nd, absolutely right. At the YMCA on Summit, is that right? Yeah, it's in the Summit Plaza, YMCA at Summit around Bush. Call the Board of Elections for the schedule. It's a little difficult to talk about on air, so call the Board of Elections for that schedule. But early voting does begin October 2nd. October 2nd. There's so much talk this year about the impact of the Hispanic population on the vote. Are we doing anything locally to ensure that that population gets out?
Initially in Cleveland, they started trying to knock on doors, 10,000 people to get to vote. But locally here, with Flock's partnership with Adelante, they want to knock on 1,000 doors, getting people to vote, getting the word out, getting people out of their homes, doing the early voting. Early voting in the south of Toledo is Wednesday, October 3rd at the Providence Center, which is on Broadway and, help me out. Broadway and South.
Yeah.
Yes, the Providence Center. So it's locally there in your neighborhood. You can go out and vote, find out if you registered. And I think for us is we hear about the weight of the Latino vote and the importance of it in Florida, in Arizona, but it affects Ohio too. It affects Toledo, and our population is not getting educated in how the election has an immediate effect on you.
Absolutely.
And how do you tell that to our people?
Yeah, there's some real significant issues that directly affect the Hispanic community that have virtually no effect on the rest of the nation. And it's very, very important, I would think, for the Hispanic community to become high knowledge voters in this particular election.
Yeah, and I think we know, in the front that it's important, and people talk about the importance, but why is it important? People need to go out and get educated, get registered, and exercise their right to vote.
Yeah, just one clarification on a point that Giselle made. You're having a special focus on early voting on October 3rd. Is that right?
Right, in
In the Old South End.
Right.
In the Old South End. But again, the early voting week starts October 2nd
Yes.
at the Y. So when are you starting to knock on doors?
We actually had a great turnout on Friday at the, help me out here, Mark. Teamsters. And, you know, trying to get people to knock on doors, get 10 people, get 20 people, and it's working, you know. And even if we don't reach the 1,000, you know, however many we can get the word out to get people to just the momentum going. Don't wait
Okay.
till the last minute, like you mentioned. If you need, actually at the early voting, they're going to have transportation limited.
I was going to ask you about that. So there is going to be transportation specifically for the Old South End.
Yes.
That's great. Mark, are you guys doing anything for transportation?
Yeah, we'll be transporting. We'll have volunteers taking folks to the polls to cast their vote. I'm not sure if we scheduled that for early voting yet, but for the day of the general election, absolutely.
Great.
We'll have numbers to call once we get all that in place. It'll be public, where they can call and get a ride to the polls.
Fabulous, because we hate for people not to vote simply because they don't have a ride to the
And
polls.
right now,
Go ahead.
Right now, the focus has to be in the next few days is making sure folks are registered and getting them registered, because if they don't know if they're registered, we can talk all we want, but if they can't cast that vote, they have to spend the next couple of days
right.
making sure everybody's registered. I believe it's 30 days before the election is when the registration deadline ends.
The Golden Week, though,
Yeah.
they can register and vote. And those dates are October 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 9th. So if you go to early vote on those days, you can register and vote. Can't get much simpler than that. Hold that thought, though, about the importance of being registered to vote. We're going to go away. We will be back in just a moment.